Good afternoon. I'm from the Presbyterian Church right here on North Broadway, and I'd like to begin by making an apology of sorts. Yesterday I was on the phone with Larry Schwartz in the county office, and Larry said, "Where were you a year ago?" And Larry was right. The religious community, I believe, should have been engaged in this conversation a year ago. And I cannot speak for the other clergy, but I would like to go on record apologizing for not being engaged in this conversation a year ago. But here we are today, and we are engaged in the conversation now. And the conversation has a certain amount of urgency. All of us want to live in a great city. But a great city is not defined simply by economic development, and it's not defined by even the safety of our children. A great city is defined by its care for all of its citizens. Not just the middle-class citizens, not just the upper-middle-class citizens, but all of our citizens, every person who says that White Plains is home. And so we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility. The religious community is unified on this issue. And so I stand up here today partly to reiterate what has already been said, but to say that the religious community does not support warming centers. And we do not believe that it is acceptable for people to try to sleep in a chair. What is that? It is the perpetuation of violence in a society that is already too violent. And so we would like to suggest several things. Number one, that immediately we must ease the restrictions on current providers so that in the short run they are able to provide beds and basic services for the most vulnerable in our midst. Secondly, we need to have a safety shelter here in White Plains. There may need to be other safety shelters in other communities in Westchester County, but there needs to be one here, and the religious community is prepared to make suggestions on where that could be, even if it's in our sanctuaries, in our church houses. So I want to thank you all for being here. Let's end the perpetuation of violence and lend ourselves to the building of a great city. Thank you very much.
Just want to remind everyone there are students going around and they're asking people to sign a proclamation, and basically it is points that every person deserves a place to rest their head at night. We need as many signatures on this as possible so that we can send a strong message to the county that people of Westchester care. Please, if you haven't signed it, please sign it. We have a lot of great students out here today working with us. Next, I'd like to introduce Alexander Roberts from Community Housing Innovations.
Thank you, Anthony. As many people have said, this is a very important issue to those of us who are providers of housing and services for the homeless. I want to say that Westchester County is a model for the country and provides the most resources and help for the great majority of homeless people. They provide apartments, they provide shelters. We're talking about a relatively small number of people who do not want to follow certain rules that are required. Our point is that you can't tell a person that just because you won't follow rules, you die. And that's the problem here. The failure here is not one of compassion, it's not one of resources, it's one of political will. The legislature and the county executive have got to devise a fair share policy to spread, or say, locate fairly these centers where people who do not want to follow rules at least have a bed to sleep in. It's a basic right. It's a basic common sense to allow that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Jonathan. Jonathan wants to tell us a story that I think is going to be very, very moving for all of us. Jonathan?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How y'all doing this morning? I'm doing fine. I'm sorry I didn't know about this. I'm just coming from a job interview. I don't know where to start at. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out here, even though I didn't know about this. What I want to say is that the drop-in and all the other places has helped me a lot. I'm at a young age. I moved from South Carolina, and when I moved up here, I started in White Plains and in the drop-in. So when they told me that the drop-in was closing, they was like, you got to go back down south. And I told them, no, I'm not going back down south. They was like, what are you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna stay up here, I'm gonna live up here. So then they kept saying, you gotta go back, you're gonna call your moms, tell them you got to go back to your family. I told them no, straight up no. Some people say it's hard to say no, but my mom told me the best way to say something, to turn down something, is to say no. So then I kept saying no, and then after a while they looked at me and it was like, see this kid right here? Yo, he's trying his best. Look at him, and he's only 19 years old, he's trying his best. Someone came up to me Tuesday and gave me said they was in a meeting, and they brought my name and they was like, this kid has come a lot. There's been times we told him to go back down south, but he just kept turning it down, and he was like, he's not gonna give up. And today, I've been up here for 3 months, and I have not given up yet. And this is my story. I did the drop-in in White Plains, I did it in Yonkers, I did it at VOA, and now I'm in a work shelter right now in Mount Vernon. So I've came a long way in 3 months. And for the people at Project Trust, I thank y'all. People that doing the drop-in, I thank y'all. People at all over, I thank y'all. Now I'm at a suitable place where I can, lay my head down. I don't have to sleep in no bench or nothing, Every day when we used to, and a big round of applause for Open Arms, for feeding us and everything. I gotta give a shout out to Open Arms, Open Arms was a good place. They helped us out. Every time we finished doing the drop-in, they would provide us food and everything. Then they'll tell us, we used to do down here at the courthouse, we used to have the officers out there. They used to ask us for our information. Officers was like, we're gonna try to get y'all off the street and stuff. I've never seen that happen. I had to do work for myself. I couldn't do no work for nobody else but myself, because I was here on a mission. My mission was to get my life in order. So here it is. So big shout out to all the people I holler at,
Thank you, Jonathan.